Pavel versus Bozzzton is about to get underway, and I've got great news for you. We've got the bans in, we've got the protects in, and that means we got our match getting ready and getting underway. For Pavel in this one, he's continued to bring his Reno Mage, which is something I've really liked to see because, as you can see down below with the lower third, that Divine Shield around class means it was protected and ineligible for ban. His Reno Mage just keeps getting banned away.
It does, yeah, and it's probably part of the reason why he keeps bringing it. I was having an interesting discussion with some players last night about the idea of, like, you know, is a ban deck always a win for the player that gets it banned? And a couple of players like presented this interesting perspective, but that's not necessarily the case. And it's down to the fact that there's a deck that doesn't end up getting played. So sometimes just banning out the weird deck, because there is a weird deck there to be banned, you don't have to ban a warrior or whatever else, and then suddenly, like, the series just becomes very simple for a player on the other side.
Interesting.
So there are, like, different ways to look at it for sure, but I still think, you know, on the surface, if you're bringing a deck that's scary enough, that's off meta, that your opponent has to pay some heed to, then I think that's probably a check mark for your lineup construction.
It's got like the inverse implications of your opponent's job is easier.
Yes, exactly.
Ah, interesting. Layers to consider that I had not. We're kicking things off. Pavel's going to be on Holy Wrath Paladin. He has continued to favor Soup Vendor, which I prefer myself. Cheap card draw, better card draw.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you. I get that it costs 2 and Acolyte costs 3, and that's definitely a huge upside. It's a cheaper card to be able to just throw out of your hand in certain situations. But Acolyte is also just generic card draw. You can play it and it draws a card if it doesn't get silenced. Like, I think with Soup Vendor, some of the time you're like holding on to Flash of Lights and weird stuff like that, and we're like, the Flash of Light was going to draw a card on turn 2 anyway, and then you end up not using it because you want to use it with your Soup Vendor later on. And you kind of end up like cancelling each other out in that weird kind of scenario. So I'm still not entirely sold on the Soup Vendor. I have wondered about like a full-on card draw version where you just play all of them and you don't play the Thekal instead.
The Eddie version.
Not quite all, like more like the Firebat version, I think, where he doesn't play Thekal and he plays a Soup Vendor and an Acolyte of Pain, I believe, or like a second True Silver as well, something like that.
Yeah, well, this week in Americas, he went with the
he did play, yeah, he did play the Eddie version. Yeah, you're right.
Which any way that you can add more card draw to the deck and still stave off pressure, that to me is the ideal spot. Like, I think that Holy Wrath Paladin has a lot of different ways to be built, and that arguing the most favor for it is very difficult because it's a deck that has a lot of variation to it. And so as a result, you need a lot of games to be able to definitively say something.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Just tough. Crystology, great draw for Pavel here. Chose not to contest the Northshire Cleric with Wild Pyro, which I found pretty curious.
Sure. Certainly something that we've been seeing Firebat, as we mentioned him, do a lot in the Americas, is just tempo out his Pyromancers wherever possible. If he has 2 mana and he doesn't have anything better to do, just play out that Wild Pyro.
You know, consequences obviously are very apparent. A buff card. That's pretty much it.
No, that's about it, but it's a pretty big consequence.
Yeah, it's very apparent.
It's
as with most things with Priest.
The contest the Northshire Cleric with a Bloodfen Raptor days are kind of over. Like, you do still have to do it in some scenarios, but the nightmare of like old Priest, where they would often not be playing their Northshire Cleric on 1 for fear of that happening to them, is gone because they have the ability to revive it, they have the ability to buff it, they can just tempo through your 3-2 with a buff and an Inner Fire, or coin extra arms, or whatever it is it comes down to. So I am less fond of contesting a Northshire Cleric with a 3-2 these days, but I think it's still a necessary evil in some matchups, and I think Holy Wrath Paladin is very often one of them.
I think one of my reasonings behind it is if Boston's going to be using buffs early, sometimes that sets you up to land the kinds of plays that you want. So for instance, Boston will forego development sometimes to protect that Northshire Cleric in the bait of a buff.
Yep.
And what that means is that he's using buffs on early minions, and he's foregoing development. So by a result, you have more time, and then at the same time, your opponent's using some of their most important cards, the buffs.
Yes.
When you get to the later stages, playing the guessing game of do I die this turn gets much easier when your opponent is limited on the 2 health pip as well as the Divine Spirits.
And this matchup, like on the game show, Do I Die This Turn, this is like the double money bonus round, the Paladin matchup. Like, this is the ultimate matchup where you actually have to, on one point, say, I could die this turn, but I can't afford to play around it. I have to shut my eyes and pretend I can't die. That almost always comes up in the Paladin matchup as long as the Priest has got a decent start. The Priest can play it very slow and steady, just build threatening boards, curve out, draw through their deck with Northshire Clerics, and they're threatening lethal on any given turn, like regardless of how big their board is. It's really not a matchup where you have to do too much in terms of all-in aggression as the Priest.
Yeah.
You just have to threaten 20, 25 damage from hand on any given turn, which is very easy when you're Priest.
Yeah. So you sort of see my explanation, I hope anyways, of why I like forcing the buffs early.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, actually, weirdly enough, the Nightmare curve you run into, when they go Cleric and you go Pyromancer to contest, quite often the worst thing that happens is they play Injured Tol'vir, and then you kill their Injured Tol'vir, but then they just Psycho Pomp back their Injured Tol'vir, and they just have that huge board, you've lost your Pyromancer.
Yeah.
Because that's how they just keep the curve going while beating your Pyromancer counter.
I have found myself in that struggle almost every time I have faced Priest as Paladin.
I got you, friend.
The balance of how they check Pyromancer is it's quite even on the range distribution. And no matter what, I feel like I'm in Pavel's spot. I'm getting attacked. There's not much I can do about it. I have to hope to draw cards like Shrink Ray to get the board back under control. That is a massive pickup for Pavel. That might have saved the game.
Yeah, that is a potentially game-winning draw because he had no response to that board state. It almost certainly would have had to pull a timeout out of his hand, which would be a huge deal on turn 5.
And for Bozzzton, he draws another Beaming Sidekick. So that Bozzzton that he has in hand is set up to draw a singular card right now.
Yep. One Northshire Cleric. I tell you, Admirable, if all of my War Golems drew me a Northshire Cleric, I'd be pretty happy with them.
You'd be happy with War Golems? You said plural S, so is that multiple Bozzzton that are in the deck at that point?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're like, yeah, I'm not worried about the second one.
All the bombs. You got to bomb chain them.
Yeah, Blom Priest. Shuffles a bunch of Northshire Clerics into your opponent's deck.
That sounds awful. I don't want to do that.
Well, no, it fatigues them, right? Because it's a cast to win drawn effect, so they draw like 3 Northshires in a row, and then you circle twice.
No. So you shuffle like 5 or 6 Northshires into their deck, they get baited into playing them, and then you just Circle of Healing, and they draw 72 cards.
Blom Priest.
What are we talking about?
I'd be a great designer. Pavel's turn looks pretty clear-cut to me.
Does it?
Yeah, you play a thing that blows up the board and then play another thing that does something. So it's either Wild Pyro Timeout, Wild Pyro Consecration, Wild Pyro Prismatic Lens, or Timeout and something.
See, when you're presenting already 4 different options, that doesn't sound like a clear-cut turn to me, which is kind of what I was thinking in response to you.
I mean in terms of like choice to make, not decision to take a path, if that makes sense. He has to do something that keeps him alive this turn. That's what's clear-cut.
Sure.
Like, he can't just decide that he's going to play Soup Vendor, Novice Engineer, Hero
Sure,
Power.
okay, sure.
He gotta blow up the board.
There are certain turns that are illegal on that turn,
Yeah.
for sure.
This is what I was favoring with Wild Pyro and Timeout. The reason being is Timeout is not a necessary card for the late game in this one.
Yes.
It is purely a setup. I actually think one of the best demonstrations that we've gotten of Paladin versus Priest was a game from Orange, where he turned his Paladin deck like into a mid-range battle for the board kind of deck. It's very much the antithesis of what the deck is. And he contained Priest by perfect mana expenditure, using the proper card draw tools on the right turn to maximize mana output, and then eventually found himself using timeouts back-to-back around this stage, and eventually wiped the board and took control with Shrivala.
I wonder.
Problem is for Pavel right now is that it's turn 7 and he is at 8, and this is 1 timeout gone. So Bozzzton can keep threatening lethal for multiple turns from this point. Even though that Bozzzton only draws him 1 cleric, that 1 cleric is then going to draw him more cards. So there is at least 3, maybe 4 refills in this hand just as it stands.
4 attack from the Reborn as well. So now Pavel's, his turn 7, I believe, has been set. Lens with timeout. He's looking for a quality off the lens.
I mean, that doesn't even get him particularly far because of the Reborn on the Blade Master. He'll still take a ton of damage with a quality Consecration.
It's the best you got.
That 1 cost Pyro is exciting though for the coming turns.
You want to amend that equality statement?
A little bit, yeah. Now equality is exciting.
He's only going to have 8 mana next turn, though.
Yep.
So does Soup Vendor and Flashlight keep him alive? In Pavel's mind, if there's no attack buff on Bozzzton's side, which right now is Interfire or Topsy, Soup Vendor Flashlight... oh, he's only... Never mind, excuse me. For in my head, the Pyro swapped the cost on the Flashlight. Yeah, you got a timeout. This is...
And this is
He's
why
sequencing next turn.
This is why I did want to dig down a little bit deeper into the turn last turn, and why I always want to set up at the start of a Paladin match that there is always one turn where you have to say, okay, if he has it, I'm going to die this turn. I wonder if that was the turn that has just passed, where he could have just like gone Consecration and maybe played something else and not used a timeout, and he would have been dead to Extra Arms, I believe, or Divine Spirit Interfire or Divine Spirit Topsy in that position. Which is, you know, there's one individual card that kills you, which is, of course, terrifying, but Bozzzton would have had 20 cards left in his deck at that point. He hasn't drawn a great deal. But now, Pavel just finds himself in the position where he is out of timeouts, and there is a reborn minion on the board that will just continue to threaten lethal for the rest of the game.
Kind of bring clarity to your point. You're saying the earlier the risk, the more likely the success.
Correct, yes. Yeah. Of course, like, relative to how much extra damage they need, right?
Yeah, I don't mind using the timeout. I think Pavel facing down double Light Warden has been my toughest start. That's what Bozzzton had this game, and you just took too much damage. Like, you got this game. That's part of Holy Wrath Paladin.
Yeah, I
Every
agree with that
combo
too.
deck has failure rates. You live and die by that.
Always going to hunt for the way out, though.
Always. There's a player on Twitter, goes by the name Meaty, and seeing tweets from them of playing combo decks in the ridiculous positions that they have gotten into at times is just one of my favorite things that I've ever seen.
The old "I won this game, by the way" tweets. They're the best.
You just look down the board, you're like, how did you get here? You're like, well, I had to use all my combo pieces to kill a 3-2. Pavel draws the equality of the Flashlight.
It was the out. That's what he had to go for, and he identified it.
Bozzzton! Oh! That reaction is so adequate.
So adequate.
Okay, so can he still get there this turn?
3, 5, 7. Yeah, Inner Fire draw is lethal.
So you lead with the shield?
The heal is the heal and the shield are both necessary for the lethal.
His beaming sidekick as well?
Yes. So that is 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. So yeah, he does everything this turn, so sequencing doesn't really matter, so you might as well just start with the cheap one, just for generically good ways of drawing cards.
So my question is, if you draw a second Divine Spirit, you would still need to draw a second card. Okay. So does that mean a different setup altogether then?
It does. It might mean just an Armet turn, yeah, because he's seen the equality and he's seen the shrink rate.
Oh. Yeah, you're right. Both timeouts, equality and shrink rate.
Yep.
So the last thing he would have to worry about is Zephyrus.
It's Zephyrus or a Shivala turn from Pavel, and I think the reason why you make the big Armet board here is exactly to play around the Shivala turn, because if you go all in on this one minion and you whiff on the Inner Fire, and then the Shivala comes down to contest it, then suddenly you're in trouble because Pavel's healing out of range. So just make 4 big minions instead.
So the out for Pavel is too many cards from Bozzzton's perception.
Agreed.
Yeah, no Divine Spirit necessary. Kangor's trying to make it exciting. It's like, Novice for Shivala,
But even then, the Shivala comes down and it kills a 1/7. If he consecrates with it as well, he can choose between the Armet and the Cleric. I'm not excited about it.
It is a zero-cost Shivala. I mean, what else you gotta do?
What would Uther do?
It's a
Draw
great question.
Shivala.
He would draw Shivala.
Then the deck first. Ooh. That means you can't Consecration. I'm in agreement with Pavel here. Don't thin the deck. Use the Consecration to wipe a minion. Hope that 14 extra health will get you there. 1 and 11.
Yeah, because again, if he doesn't consecrate, he's killing a 1/7 beaming sidekick with his Shivala, which just doesn't really achieve anything.
This is the correct call for Pavel afterwards to Holy Wrath his own minion.
No, you Holy Wrath the Cleric for 25.
Yeah,
that's the line this turn.
Archer
That's
instead.
the opposite of 25, as everyone knows. On the number wheel, 1 and 25 are direct opposites.
Bozzzton just some relief after the middle stage of that game. Like, he was in such a favorable spot at the end, and the situation is still tense for him. And that's because the match is so important. He needs to win this one.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's huge for him because if Bozzzton wins, he is straight up safe in terms of the league proceedings. He cannot be relegated. It's equally important for Pavel on the other side of the coin because if he wins, he locks himself into playoffs. But with all that pressure being piled on the players, I do really like Bozzzton's endgame decision there. We got excited about lethal outs because, of course, we did. It's important to talk about like how the lethal outs worked. But I think Bozzzton there kept a cool head, and he said, well, you know, I had 16 cards or something left in my deck at that point. If I don't hit an Inner Fire or a Topsy-Turvy, my board just isn't that exciting compared to what he can do. So I'm just going to make the huge board. He's equality'd, he's shrink raid, he timeouted twice. Like, how does he counteract this board? And you saw the best case scenario we could think of was consecrate the board, run a Shivala into a Northshire Cleric or an Armet, in which case there's still 2 minions left on board that can be Divine Spirit, buffs, Inner Fire, lethal on the following turn. Like, it was a really nice recognition that he did not need lethal that turn because 4 huge minions was lethal. Sometimes your opponent does not have to explode for you to find lethal on a given turn.
Yeah, I mean, your whole goal is find percent. And in certain times in matchups, that percent can come in a number of different ways. Priest matchups, it comes oftentimes by just squashing all their minions. They have nothing left, and there's nothing they can do. Against Paladin, it's just setups. Turn after turn, you set up, and you force them to use every tool they have to fend themselves off. And once they're out of those, that's it. Like, you have won at that point. So I think that Shivala would have been tough still. Like, it would have been annoying and kind of awkward, but Bozzzton's setup there, I think, is a higher percent than trying to draw for the lethal immediately.
Yep, 100% agree. And speaking of those resources, like you do always have to be very good at the do I die this turn game. Like, it's in some cases, like, I'm being facetious, you can't be good at it. It's just a guess in a lot of positions. Like, your hand reads can improve your success rate on how often you die on any given turn, but that really is key to the matchup. And I think I can't really like attack a player for saying, oh, I die to 4 here, I'm going to time out. But maybe that's the one turn that could have changed things. It's results oriented because we could see he didn't die that turn if he didn't time out there, but maybe for Pavel, that was the one turn to look at. All
right, well, we got to go to break. When we come back, we're jumping into game number 2 of Pavel taking on Bozzzton. Important wins for both of them. We'll see if Bozzzton can close it or if Pavel can lock his playoff spot. Stay tuned.
Good enough. Don't have to do it my way, just find a way that works. ETC does recover from that one ropey turn in it.
Wait, he needs to play the weapons project. He's just dead. If he didn't play the weapons project, the Hunter Ace can just go Fireball, Zephyrus, Fireball. Viper got the Blast Shield. Viper realizes that he just made a huge error here. Bomb!
Bomb! Second bomb!
Oh no, all the things are green.
Third bomb!
Third bomb!
That was like low-key, super good.
Everything worked out about as perfectly as possible.
What is Tice doing there? He drew a smiley face on an orange.
Hello everyone, I'm Pavel. I didn't think too much about the username, I just wanted something simple and recognizable, so I thought that my name is perfect because I like my name. I'm looking forward to play and compete against one of the best players in the world. Most of them are my friends. I'm excited about the opportunity to qualify for the global finals. I wouldn't call myself a unique player. I just think that everyone can achieve good results if you work hard and play a lot of Hearthstone. My favorite memory of Hearthstone Esports is definitely when I won a World Championship in 2016 and just took a trophy. I was just overwhelmed. One of the things that I like outside of Hearthstone gaming is to go on the nature trips, for example, go hiking or do a picnic or something. It feels really good to be in the Grandmaster League and be alongside with one of the best players in the world. I'm still a really good player. I'm looking forward to playing Grandmaster and show everyone there's no any other player who is better than me.
My name is Elias Sibelius and I go under Bozzzton. My username actually comes from my cat. His name is Bozzzton, so I just took that and made it a bit cooler with the Z. So yeah, shout out to him. When I got the confirmation that I was in Grandmaster, I was overwhelmed by emotions. Even though I haven't had the first place big tournament win, they actually appreciate that consistency and what I've been working for the last couple of years. I'm very good at focusing on a specific thing and keeping myself ready for the situation. Yeah, and my games and stuff like that. My favorite memory is still my first DreamHack. I remember facing Super JJ. I was a total newcomer, so it was very big for me to just be there and just realizing that I could actually beat all these players, and it was very cool. My personal goals for this year is I want to qualify for the playoff. Of course, I want to go to the global finals. That's, I think, everyone's goal, but I want to be one of the best players. I will try my best to get there, for sure.
Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe. We are amidst our first match of the day between Pavel and Bozzzton. Right now, Bozzzton out to a 1-0 lead. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable's Mora, joined by Simon Asado Welch. And now we're heading into a Paladin versus Shaman game where Pavel's running it back. And I would say that Shaman certainly has been figured out a lot more in the last few weeks as players started to gain traction of what makes the deck powerful in a matchup. And so my opinion of this one has gotten much closer than it was before.
Really? Okay, how, put percentage on it?
I would say it's close to 53 Paladin.
Wow.
Yeah, before I was massively in the Paladin camp. And I think
am still massively in the Paladin camp.
Okay, I'm not that massively in the Paladin camp.
Okay.
Some of it was at the hands of you, where you were just mercilessly beating me up by playing as much stuff as you could every single turn.
Yeah, that did happen.
Ever since that day, things just haven't been the same.
Fair enough. I have that effect on a man, Admirable.
No comment.
Probably wise.
I like the opening hand from Bozzzton. I think this is the kind of opening hand that actually gives Pavel the most trouble. Early Bog Slosher keeps you safe from Consecration.
Yep, Pyromancer as well.
Woo! Early
Pyros are annoying, but as you can see on Bozzzton's face, early Christologies are very annoying as well.
Hey, come on, man. You just beat one of these. Now's not the time.
Yeah, he was playing Priest last time, though.
Well,
I think if he got to Q Priest again, he'd be happy to see the Christology.
Well, that's the thing, is you're playing Shaman this time, and everyone knows that Shaman is a superior class.
Oof. That is a spicy take from Mr. Zamora.
Quest Shaman, best Shaman.
Which path to choose?
You know, that's what you can always count on me for. I'll never say it the way Raven does.
Same.
Shaman every time.
Yeah. Even though to this day, people still get, I still get comments. It's like, oh, pronounce Shaman properly. I do. That's the other one. You are thinking of the other one.
I cast a completely different region.
Yeah. We're not even partners anymore.
Saddle's like, I'm tall and handsome, all right?
Raven's short and handsome?
Raven reminds me of the modern day rebel without a cause.
What?
You're not supposed to like him, but you just do.
Oh, I find a way not to.
What?
That's the claim anyway.
Yeah.
Raven has that effect on a man.
Sticking to it.
You belong to
Sloshing him up. Get some 3-3s rolling.
Yeah, just play the curve. Just playing a bunch of 1-1s this turn didn't seem too exciting, especially since Kobold Lackey doesn't really have a good target right now. Kobold Lackeys in hand are very valuable in the matchup, so you can threaten damage through board wipes.
Yep, this is where it becomes a problem. The literal Blood Mage opening from Pavel's side with coin allows him to wipe out the Bog Slosher, and now Consecration is a threat to your 3-3 board.
Absolutely, yep.
So suddenly, there's a good Kobold Lackey target.
Yeah, Bozzzton could have kobolded it on the previous turn, but it just didn't fit the curve very well. It fits the curve a lot nicer here.
Yeah.
And you are giving up 4 damage from this Kobold Lackey over time to the face. But I think it's a decent trade to say that you will get to develop a board here that deals 4+ damage if you take care of this Blood Mage Thanos.
Looks like he might be cooking up some alternatives. I wouldn't mind some alternatives here. There are definitely some lackeys you could get that don't help. Ooh. Really? I'm pretty surprised by that. That felt like a good Sandstorm turn. I suppose it has implications versus Crystalsmith Kangor.
It does, yeah. Having an answer to that is very important because Shaman doesn't deliver damage too quickly in the matchup until they start to build up that late game hand of, you know, Wasps and Life Drinkers and Kobold Lackeys that can all come in one turn. So just having a Crystalsmith Kangor that you have to trade into 2 or 3 times can slow you down enormously. So making sure you have answers to that is very important. I think from Bozzzton's position here, he says, you know, Consecration isn't really a good turn for my opponent in this position. Like, sure, he kills a 3-3, but then I just get to redevelop again on the following turn.
Which path to choose?
I would debate that's worth it still.
I would wonder if Pavel with Consecration in hand isn't just thinking about Prismatic Lens instead here.
I think that's the, you know, pretty clear alternative to it. So if he's going to bump, he's not going Lens this turn.
Yeah, the problem with that is that then with the Blood Mage card draw, he ends on 10. He has to play cards this turn.
Oh, I wonder if Bozzzton recognized that actually. Like if he wants to draw off the Blood Mage, what that means is he has to play hand cleanup, and if he's playing hand cleanup, then the Sandstorm comes down properly.
Yeah, maybe.
Because that's either Crystalsmith Kangor or Soup Vendor that's going to come down.
Right.
Or Elven Archer.
Right.
I think that is more of an unintended consequence, and perhaps guided by experience than active thought.
So now Bozzzton has to question which of these battle cries does he not want to double in the matchup? And that is not an easy question to answer right now. He may very well want that Kobold doubled. He may very well want that Cable Rat doubled. He probably doesn't care about his Sandstorm being doubled, except in the scenario of Crystalsmith Kangor.
I'm kind of looking at how do you build to the Shutterwalk being as massively powerful as quickly as possible?
I like this Totem, Rushman, Sandstorm Elemental.
Yes.
This completes quest, and it keeps all of those important battle cries I was talking about in his hand. It's also resistant still to Consecration.
Healing Totem's not the worst either. Like, your minions, sometimes, as you have to pay attention to board, they just take residual damage and get weakened.
Sure.
It just makes Pyromancer that much more annoying on Pavel's side. Snap Consecration as a result.
No Elven Archer, though, means that 4 more damage is coming through. So now Bozzzton is just trying to build up this burst damage.
I like this line.
That's burst damage.
Oh, my.
That's damage right now. Time to get pushing for Bozzzton.
And when he runs into second Consecration here, he's got a strong reload already.
Yep.
Hit the Hero Bower button, play 2 Kobold Lackeys, Bog Slosher.
Does he want to mutate his 2-drop to try and play around Consecration?
I think this is a potential opportunity for it. However, I don't think it's a necessity.
I hope you like my invention.
3.1 health on average on a 3-drop, which means on average he gets a minion that survives, but 1 Consecration was already used. Pyromancer is also scary there, which kind of gets me interested in using the mutate a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I think he was specifically considering the reload. Like, maybe you want to see the AoE. It's like early for it.
you'd rather have a minion live that hit your opponent in the face again every time.
It's true, but I think there is something to be said about, you know, baiting tools from the other side. Like, Paladin has a lot of these tools, and as they use them, the game gets easier.
Sure. I mean, we saw it in the previous game, right? Important tools were used far too early, and then the Paladin was just a little bit helpless.
Yeah, I think Bozzzton's eyeing an early Shutterwalk this game. That's what it feels like to me. And if he held on to the Mutate, the Witchwood Piper line makes more sense, but then he holds off on it.
I disagree. I think the exact opposite. I think when you account for Witchwood Pipering on the following turn, your hand is going to fill up so quickly that you just wanted to use this Mutate on any given turn to get it out of your hand to stop you having hand size concerns.
So does the Mogu Flesh Shaper influence him to keep it at that point? Like, he decides to not use the previous turn, picks up Mogu Flesh Shaper. I feel now you're pretty influenced to keep it.
Right, but at the decision point I'm talking about, he didn't have a Mogu Flesh Shaper in his hand, right?
He did not.
Okay. Alright, so there is that Crystal Smith Kangor turn. We talked about this is a big issue. Pavel has already healed himself back up to 27.
Yeah, Kobold's pretty primed for this as well.
So it's not actually that big of a deal to let the Kangor full heal in this position. It's only healing for 3 if he can take care of it, even with attacks.
Nice minions.
So this might just be the Mogu Flesh Shaper turn. He will get paid off with that Mutate, more often than not.
Oh my gosh. This is gonna be tough for Pavel. Like, you can't anticipate this much damage. That's 12 from hand just with the lackeys.
Yep. More than that, Bog Slosher as well.
Yeah, so with 9 mana open, he's able to do 16 from hand.
Yep. And we haven't seen what he gets out. Don't start playing Gruuls. It's going to give me really bad flashbacks to yesterday, all right? We know what comes next. Yeah, we haven't even seen the spells roll off this Ethereal Lackey yet, so if that starts rolling Lightning Bolts and Lava Bursts, this can be a ludicrous amount of damage built up in hand for Bozzzton.
Pavel does have, I think, a very strong hand for this spot. With 10 cards left in deck, he has Equality, and he has Shrink Ray, and he's got a Wild Pyro, and he's got a Prismatic Lens.
Yep.
So I think that Pavel does have the gas to fight this off, and you take a look at how aggressively Bozzzton's been pushing this game and trying to generate resources to end. This scenario that he's in particularly is quite rare, but this kind of chip damage does add up, because Pavel's hand is not always going to be this high quality. And that's my opinion on the matchup right there, is just how well is Pavel set up in a turn just like this one.
This is why I tend to believe it's still a very strong matchup for the Paladin, because they still have so many potential answers to situations like this. And even in this world, right, where Bozzzton has had very, very good outcomes, building up 16 plus damage from hand in his hand, which doesn't always happen. Like, a lot of the time, these are just Evolve Lackeys or Faceless Lackeys that are just kind of playing into what the Paladin's game plan is. Even in that world where Pavel's facing down 16, he looks like he's just kind of chilling right now.
Okay, so he's using the Shrink Ray to buy time on board. His plan is to follow that up with Equality and Wild Pyromancer stuff.
Yes.
That floats 3 mana.
It does. This is a turn that you look for in the matchup, though, but specifically you look for it in situations where you board lock your opponent, which isn't quite the case here for Pavel. Like, Bozzzton can trade something off and develop. It's just the fact that with only 1 board space available, Shaman can still struggle to do the powerful things they want to do.
I am quite curious about that previous turn.
I am too.
I wanted to get much more aggressive on the board clear and roll into card draw, because Bozzzton was locked out of Shutterwalk this turn. Like, he's not like developing board with a bunch of lackeys chaining off, and it's not like he would have played Shutterwalk anyway. So to me, like, the board clears on back-to-back turns with aggressive card draw means that going into Shutterwalk, Pavel would be looking to end the game.
Sure.
So I'll be curious to see what he has planned
It does.
for this payoff.
Yeah, I mean, Pavel does essentially buy a turn with this play, right? Where he's trying to say to his opponent... Now, obviously, you guys are staring at a world where that isn't real, and that world is Bog Slosher. But this is what Pavel wanted to happen. was that, you know, Bozzzton can at most play one more minion here, so he can't play like a former champ that summons 5/5s, for example. He struggles to make like a big impactful board. And then essentially Pavel using a Pyromancer and Shrink Ray clear, but over 2 turns, is good for him because he just deletes 1 turn from the game, and that brings him 1 step closer to being in control of the game.
I think the Gruul is the one that's breaking the rule for me on that one.
Yeah, and the Gruul is a problem for sure, but it would have only been this 3/3 coming back into it, which Pavel has some game against with the True Silver champion. Like, I think Pavel's turn was to go Pyro, Flash of Light, True Silver on this turn. A lot of the time.
Wait, what is he doing here?
Still the same thing.
Like to play with fire?
Go Prismatic Lens.
So he's timeout is. Oh, timeout's like
Shivala turn. Could just take a Shivala turn here.
I think that timeout was one of the few spells actually left in the deck for Pavel. So he had a Crystology remaining, a Flashlight remaining, a Holy Wrath remaining, and 2 timeouts remaining.
What would Uther do?
I'm concerned. We just used a Pyro, and we still have an Equality, and we don't have another way to deal damage to the board.
Yes. So because of that Sludge Slurper coming down, the Bog Slosher coming down and making the big Sludge Slurper, instead of the world I described, where Pavel would use a Pyromancer and a Shrink Ray for a full clear, but over 2 turns instead of 1, he's used a Pyromancer and a Shrink Ray to not full clear his opponent's board, which is obviously very bad for him.
So what I'm thinking is that Pavel, with limited number of minions left in the deck, we're looking at Pyromancer. Is that the last one?
Float like a butterfly. Sting like a
Elven Archer.
Oh, he's got High Priest to call an Elven Archer. Man, I don't know about this one. This looked rough around the edges.
It did.
There is little time.
I guess any way you slice it, with how many lackeys he knows Bozzzton has. Yeah, I'm coming around to it. I think there's justification for him taking these big risks.
I mean, no, like I've explained the justification for it. It's just he's ended up in a world that made it look stupid, and that happens sometimes in Hearthstone. But like, imagine it the other way around, right? If we want to be results-oriented in this world, let's be results-oriented in the other world as well, because he Pyro Shrink Ray full clears the whole board, and then Bozzzton goes Hero Power Former Champ, massive board again. Then what?
Yeah, so I didn't mind the Shrink Ray setup. It was the follow-up that concerned me, where I was looking at Pavel using Equality Wild Pyromancer Flashlight on that turn. And so you end up with a 3/1 Pyro in play versus nothing. And then on the following turn with 10 mana, you have double lens opportunity.
Okay, interesting. Because that looked like a Shivala turn to me from Pavel's side. Where it was Pyromancer, Spell, and Shivala probably into the Gruul, and then shuffle it back into the deck. He still has True Silver, he still has Zephyrus in terms of like beating down 30 damage from that point, even if Bozzzton's able to heal.
Because he saved the Shivala, what that means is he's free to use the Zephyrus. So
Act now.
the Equality and Whirlwind. Interesting. Lets you fit in the Flashlight. Very nice. So that was something he was factoring into his Prismatic Lens as well, was that I can hit Wild Pyromancer or I can hit Zephyrus from it. And they both provide the same result.
And if he would rather use the Zephyrus as a board clear, then he didn't want to use the Shivala on that turn, because you kind of feel like you need one or the other to beat like Life Drinker into Shuttlewalk kind of full heal situations.
Yeah, and now you're seeing the payoff that Pavel gets is he gets essentially a turn off in this situation. Now he has time to, if he wants to, draw a card with Holy Wrath. If he wants to set up True Silver Champion and Bash Face to get that second Holy Wrath or the first Holy Wrath up to the 25 damage mark that actually delivers lethal. Yep. So I think that his plan, when I see and account for Zephyrus afterwards, is much more clear-cut.
Yep. I like the Shrink Ray turn. I'm still not 100% sold on the Pyro turn that he took, but I think it's very justifiable. It's also worth noting as like an influence as to whether you want to use the Shivala, whether you want to use the Zephyrus. He still has the Elven Archer in his deck, right? So the full 1 turn 30 with True Silver, Elven Archer, Holy Wrath is still available to him. And if he wants to go down that line, then he can use a Shivala and use the Zephyrus and still end the game in 1 turn.
I was tunneled on the Zephyrus being the overkill damage if you need it, the beyond 25. And Pavel was not. That is experience at play.
Bozzzton's giddying up this turn. This is almost certainly an overfilled hand, but getting that Kobold Lackey back is pretty nice for one of the cards to actually end up in his hand this turn.
Yeah, this is about summoning extra minions.
It's about panicking, if I'm honest, because I think he very much feels this game slipping away from him, so he just felt like he had to do something powerful this turn.
Yes. I think that's what he was gunning for the whole game, too. Like, when he's favoring developing summons, like with Faceless Lackey, Former Champ, etc.
Yeah.
He doesn't want a ton of Kobold Lackeys in the pool because those are just random 2 damage stuff.
Yeah.
Minions in play equals threatened to Pavel.
Yep.
But with 2 timeouts left, how much of a threat is that? 1 timeout left, excuse me. Still an Elven Archer, so Crystology draws that. I believe that is checkmate since Bozzzton isn't drawing a card.
It's a lethal setup. And as far as we can see, there's no way to heal in Bozzzton's hand. Pavel doesn't know that, but he knows he has a way to set up 2-turn lethal, so why would you not do that?
So timeout, True Silver, smack the 3/4. No, that doesn't do anything. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
That's also 7 additional mana. He only has 3.
Yes. Well, I'm looking at like multiple setup turns. Like, where do you fit it all in?
Sure.
If Bozzzton doesn't heal, Boston's dead.
Yes.
So that's really the TLDR.
So if Bozzzton heals, then what?
Act now.
Because he does not get the True Silver to go through for the additional damage in 1 turn, and his Zephyrus for a Lightning Bolt or a Soulfire is gone.
It's time to test your metal.
So with that in mind, Pavel is going to try and use these Chavalas to plow through the taunts so that he can guarantee the True Silver to go face and try and beat the healing. Still has the 50-50, so he's cut his odds to a 50-50 if Bozzzton can't heal on the following turn.
That would depend on the last card, which I believe... I'm trying to hunt it down right now.
I wonder.
Second True Silver.
Oh, right, yeah, he plays 2, doesn't he?
Yep.
Yeah. This is a lot of damage coming through from Bozzzton, though. Nothing. 9 more on board, 8 more from hand is 17.
I'm counting 26.
Lightning Bolt is 20. Are you?
Yeah.
Really?
I counted 26.
9, 13, 17, 20. Where's the other 6 coming
Goblin
from?
Lackey.
Double time and double
I
time.
just count this wrong. 11?
I'm pretty sure you counted it wrong, yeah.
8, 19. Oh, it is. Yeah, I did count it wrong. I see what I did. I counted the Goblin Lackey as a big Lackey. Okay. Yeah, my apologies. So Bozzzton discovers a Witch's Brew. Big deal.
Less of a big deal when there is an Elven Archer still in the game, though.
Out of cards.
And now the taunts are gone. So Pavel's 2-turn setup has got him over the line because he wins the 50-50 on the Shavala draw as well. We can have all the arguments we want about that mid-game. The crucial turn, that last turn, I think Pavel got it absolutely spot on.
Yeah, goodness gracious. That was a complicated game. There's so much going on in that one.
Because we were talking about Life Drinkers into Shudderwalk or whatever. That world didn't exist. We could see it. But if he doesn't spend that turn chewing through those taunts, that same turn happens for Bozzzton where he goes for lethal outs from his Ethereal Lackey. He says, oh, I didn't get the lethal outs. Let's take these Witch's Brews instead. And then the Witch's Brews mess with Pavel because the True Silver can't go face because there's taunts in the way. He would have used his timeout on the previous turn if he didn't go for the Shavala turn. And suddenly he would have been stuck in this kind of landlocked situation where he can't hit the lethal. And he can't stall a turn either because he's used his clears and he's used his timeout. So that Shavala turn was crucial for Pavel on that penultimate turn of the match.
No, seriously, it was. That was super good recognition. And contrast this to Season 1 of Pavel, where he's bringing like Nomi Priest and kind of just jamming cards around. Like Pavel's in form this season, and at the start of the season, his Paladin play looked good, but it didn't look top-notch. And so in the middle of that game, there was a lot of moving parts that didn't look so clean, but his plan was literally to rely on the Zephyrus or the Wild Pyromancer to be that final board clear that was in his deck.
Yep.
And so once he got to that point, what that meant was his mana expenditure was unclean, but his card draw was maximized. And so with that card draw maximized, he gets to the endgame spot where he has that freedom with Shrivala to chew through taunts and rely on true silver damage. Like, that is excellent experience being displayed, like, particularly in endgame scenarios for Pavel in that spot. And that's top form Pavel for you. Great macro plans.
And it's very possible that I would have lost that game. You know, I was suggesting a Shivala turn earlier. So I would have had more security, like a higher health total going into certain turns. But I would have been in that late game scenario, and not, like, that 50-50 straight up loses me the game if I miss it, because it's my last Shivala at that point in the world that I was suggesting. So Pavel's line, it's a recognition of the matchup where you say, I don't need everything. I have massive overkill in the matchup. I don't need 2 Holy Wraths and a Zephyrus and all of these board clears.
Nope.
I have to decide and ration out which fulfills which role in the matchup. I think Pavel did that very, very nicely.
Yeah, it's a matchup where your opponent does not go beyond the 30 mark. Simple as that.
Yep.
1 Holy Wrath. I've tried to do the Finley Holy Wrath decks, and as soon as you queue into armor, it doesn't work. But the idea is...
Wait, the Finley Holy Wrath?
Yeah, you use the Finley to, like, get, like, the free Warlock life tap.
Gotcha.
Or to get, like, tank up or something.
Right.
Like,
but then you queue into someone else playing the same deck, and they Finley tank up you, and it's just game over.
That actually happened to me one game. I couldn't win. I got a Druid hero power. Still pretty cool. But the idea there is, like, when you don't have to deal beyond 50, the first Holy Wrath is expendable as card draw.
Yep.
And it's kind of weird because it's 5-cost card draw, but sometimes that's enough to burn through the deck.
Yeah, crucially, the first Holy Wrath is expendable as card draw, but also the first Shivala is expendable as a panic button or as a setup turn.
Yeah.
And Pavel did not need a panic button that game. He was in pretty clean control of the situation the whole time. As I said, even against the 20 damage that was building up in Bozzzton's hand, he was in a pretty comfortable spot. But he used it as just a solution to a problem that existed that wasn't even obvious. Like, he would have to divine the situation to even see that that's a problem. He recognized it. He found the line that beat it.
And so now game 3 is on deck with Pavel. He's playing Priest in this one, and Bozzzton's going to have to win with Shaman. Bozzzton has very much followed in the footsteps, I think, that Bunny Hopper first traced, which was the protect Shaman, ban Shaman situation. He didn't protect his Shaman in this matchup. I think it would have been weird to do so. Pavel's never banning it. But he has been playing it a ton. And his play with the deck has gotten, I think, immensely better from week 1 to this week, where his game plans are more defined, and he's finding ways to use every single tool as a setup to the next turn. And to me, that's the really big key of a marquee Shaman player, is that they're not just having efficient turns, they're having setup turns for the follow-ups as well.
A reminder, as we go into Game 3 of this crucial series of the stakes, a win for Bozzzton in this game, and by extension this match, means that he is safe from relegation. A win on the other side for Pavel means that he locks up a playoff position. Could not be more important. Both of these players need the game of their lives right now.
And what better way to have the game of your life than the start of your life for Bozzzton? Turn 1 totem, nothing for Priest 1 and 2.
See, you are very much the yin to my yang, because I was going to make that exact same point, but say when you've got playoffs on the line, you do not want to draw the 3-3-4-7 hand as Priest, because you want your 1-drops in this matchup to start dominating this board nice and early.
Bozzzton's got a Lackey set up, he's got Wasp. If Pavel does not draw Circle of Healing here, he may get out-tempoed completely. Now, we see Psychopomp in his hand. But for Bozzzton, this is a lot of gas that's kicking here. With the Titanic Lackey, you get to isolate the Reborn minion that's going to come into play. That totem is still cranking, so every time you pick up a Titanic Lackey or you roll a totem, you can isolate the big minion in play every single time.
And I am not a fan of this leave a Blade Master alive to play around Psychopomp theory that's been going around since this deck basically existed. Like, no, you know what you play around by killing a Blade Master? Like 17 different cards that heal or buff it.
I see the idea. I think it's clever. I think it's absurd. Yeah, this is great. Look at how good that Titanic Lackey's going to fight this off.
Yep.
Suit up the Wasp, develop more minions, get the Mogu in play, trade over that 3-1, start going face. Bozzzton now is free to hunt, isolating that single big minion the rest of the game.
I like all of the words that you just said.
And with 2 life drinkers on deck, this game can end quickly on Bozzzton's side.
Yeah, so on 3 or 2 on the quest? Just the 2, okay. So he still needs 4 more before he can start doubling up those life drinkers, but it's not going to be a huge factor because he's just so dominant on board right now. And if you're winning board against Priest, you are winning a lot of games of Hearthstone.
Yeah, the thing about the matchup is you actually at some point somewhat favor rolling a totem. Okay, I'm interested now.
Full clear?
So he's going full clear here. I'm curious if this offers more security in the long run.
Now that I look at the ending board state, yeah. I'm kind of a big fan of this. Why give the opponent an opportunity to just scam you with a, Divine Spirit and Inner Fire in their hand, right? Just make a 14-14 that you can never deal with.
It is a large part of the range.
14-14 that you can't ever deal with, and then even if you have a lackey, they just silence your lackey and just start pushing face damage. It's a way you lose.
I don't know. I'm curious. So for Bozzzton, the payoffs on this line are if he generates Witchy Lackey from Totem.
I wonder.
I think the payoffs for this line are everything that isn't exactly Psycho Pomp into second Blade Master. Like, name another turn that Bozzzton didn't beat this turn.
Pyro.
Eh?
Yeah, Pyro Shield's pretty rough.
Is it?
Yeah, you had a 3-1, 1-1, and 1-2.
You have Rush Lackey in your hand to just run something into the Pyro, clear the board again? I don't really care about Pyromancer.
I may be caster visioned here. It's possible. So I'm staring down a pair of those bad boy life drinkers. I'm thinking face. That's 12.
That's very reasonable. It was a long time before he was going to get to double those life drinkers, though, right?
True
because
story.
he was on the Evil Totem line, which is a fairly slow quest completion, even though you do generate a lot of lackeys. So there was a good chance he was going to have to do this kind of thing anyway, just play it out as a 4-mana 3/3, in which case the face damage is a lot less important.
I'm thinking of a card for Pavel that is not what Bozzzton wants to see right now.
Doesn't look like Pavel
that
hit
look. Yeah, that's a card that Pavel doesn't want to see right now.
Yep.
That totem is still alive.
So quest active. These Goblin Lackey, or this Goblin Lackey, is now huge in terms of board control.
More Titanics. You'll take them.
Hey, more Goblins right now.
You'll take those too.
Yep.
Ooh. The Witchy on the Life Drinker gives you a 6.
Yep.
And at the 6 health mark, there are a lot of 5 health minions.
What to do?
And then you have the Titanic Lackey afterwards.
Oh, you
or
want to think
can
about
rush.
rushing that? Sure, yeah.
You can rush it,
Makes
or you
sense.
can taunt it. Like, if you can taunt up to 9 health via the +4 from Titanic Lackey, this is a massive turn. Holy smokes.
Yeah, 5.1 health on average on a 6 drop. That's a lot more than 5.1, Admirable.
That's number Wang.
All right, you
Oh,
win
that's
it.
GG.
You win this round. That actually broke me a little bit.
That is GG.
Oh, why is number Wang so funny?
It's because it doesn't make sense.
Yep.
Just like a 5-12 taunt.
For 6, off your life drinker.
In the light's name.
That's just the best
Got you,
one.
friend.
Up to 7, up to 9. Inner Fire and down to 2 health. The evil totem is still alive.
There are 58 6 drops, Admirable. That is the best one in that situation.
Kobold, Barista, Kobold.
Seems legit.
I think that locks it, honestly. Like, what, you're still worried about Wild Pyromancer stuff, but you just drew a Shutterwalk. Like,
Yeah.
you're crushing the board. Like,
I have not been worried about Wild Pyromancer for the majority of this game. As long as there remains one card in Bozzzton's hand that can answer that Wild Pyromancer, even if it comes down as a full clear, then I am not afraid of it. Which is why I actually don't want to use this Rush Lackey right now.
well, I think he's looking at the battle cries that perhaps he doesn't
Oh, he's
want.
going to Rush Lackey and Barista instead of
Yeah.
reusing the Cobalt Lackey. This is fun. Yeah, this makes sense. This is totally fine.
Just gives you a range of options.
Yep.
Yeah, he's won the card advantage battle.
But he's going to burn a card, Admirable. You can never win a game of Hearthstone when you burn a card.
The worst thing that can happen to you.
My hand is too full.
Oh!
We need another one. This one's only been alive for 8 turns.
Bozzzton, with his season on the line, with his Grandmaster's career on the line, has found a way through this with a little bit of help from a bad curve from Pavel and a damaged Stegatron from his Evolve.
Kobold Lackey face, trade off a minion, and Rush Lackey for +2 attack. And I believe that's lethal.
Down to 5, trade 1 off, 3 more, plus the 2.
Indeed, very clean. Bozzzton sees a weak start from Pavel, and he capitalizes.
And Sir, let out that sigh of relief.
Fist
Because you are safe.
Woo! You love to see that. The passion that's involved with that. 7 weeks of play, grueling battles and preparation day in and day out to keep yourself alive and in Grandmasters. That's what you just saw from Bozzzton.
And in a incredibly tough group as well. You know, both of them are in Europe, but for Bozzzton to at least achieve safety in that division with a bunch of the players that are in there, it won't have been what he set out for at the start of the season, but I think as he saw the season progress and he was you know, getting dragged more and more into that relegation battle as Fino and Psycho started to pick up wins, I think, you know, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, he would have been very happy with this position. And you can see from his reaction that in week number 7, he is definitely very happy with his position.
Let's talk to the man himself. Bozzzton, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Hey.
Congratulations on your win. This was a big one. Your reaction, I think, was quite lovely to see. And so I imagine this is a big relief off your shoulders. Talk to me about how you're feeling right now in your season.
I don't have words almost. It's such a relief to just be out of the position of no relegation. It's just, it was like not likely at all to get relegation. There was like 10 matches that had to go the wrong way for it to even be possible. And now we are here the last week and everyone up till now went the wrong way. So we were down to only 4, but I really didn't want to go into a match tomorrow against Fino that is like not do or die, but I have to rely on other people's results in that case, and that's not a situation I want to be in. I think watching others play is like even worse than playing myself because you have like no control whatsoever about to do anything in the game. So getting the win here is it just feels amazing. I'm just happy being. This group was insane. I wasn't aiming for, I was aiming for playoff, and I think I played really well this season. So maybe I would have hoped to get there, and I can still get there with some fortunate outcomes. But just now, I'm just so happy to avoid relegation. It just means everything to keep playing Hearthstone and doing what I love to do.
So I want to ask you, you were obviously feeling nervous, but do you think at any point it's affected your play at all? Because we've certainly seen like subpar performances from a lot of players in situations where the stakes have been really high, but I think you were in like quite a few tough spots in that series, and I think you navigated them pretty well. So I was kind of surprised at how calm you appeared to be playing. Like, how did you feel playing the match?
I was kind of calm going into the match, to be honest. And I felt, but when he queued the Paladin into my Shaman, which I didn't expect at all, he won the mind games 2 times. I think the opening match, him getting the Paladin into my Priest was also good for him. Because if he wins that, his Priest should always get a win, almost. It didn't here. But when he queued the Paladin and suddenly I have 2 unfavorables with my Shaman because he's always going to queue the Priest in the last one. I think I messed up the last turns in the Shaman game against his Paladin. I didn't find my Life Drinker, and then it just becomes Shaman is the deck where you can just like panic the most, and it's really hard to because there's so much stuff that you have to figure out, and then you forget one thing like board space. Board space is actually like usually what you mess up with in the deck, because I had pretty much stuff, and but then the lackeys just stack up, and you don't have board space, and you don't get everything, and it was just a mess. Because you have to think about lethal, and you have to think about safe, and just too much. But yeah, so I think that turn was the turn that I messed up. But otherwise, I think I played okay.
I kind of want to zoom out now and take a look at your season as a whole as well. You know, I think that you had this is the toughest division, I think, across Grandmasters, and you held your own within this division, I would say. I'm curious what you felt like some of your biggest strengths and weaknesses were throughout all the weeks of play so far.
It's really hard to say now, but I think my technical play has been pretty much on point. The first 2 weeks, everything was new, and I don't think my deck list and stuff were optimal for the format, because no one had figured out the format pretty much. So because you bring some certain decks that can have 2 favorables, but they are not good in the lineup anyways. And I think the biggest deck that I feel that way is the Zoo, for example. It's just okay matchups overall, but when everyone has Warrior, for example, it's just when they have an auto-loss matchup, it's just very bad to bring in this format, usually. But yeah, I'm just speaking way too much.
No, this is wonderful.
This is your time. This is your
Bozzzton,
platform.
let it
You're
out.
You're safe. You're a Grandmaster again, Bozzzton.
This is what we want.
It's just way too much stuff in my head now, and I'm just way too happy to focus on what I want to say. But what I really want to get out is that I hope we can send energy to Orange now, because I really hope he wins his next match, so that we both can be safe.
Well,
so,
all right, Bozzzton. I'm shipping it over there for you as well. You know, it's gonna be heartbreaking for me anyway it goes. I can only imagine the pressure you guys are facing through it. You played a well-played series here, very deserving of your spot, very deserving to be here in Season 3 as well. Congratulations, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.